Good evening, my sleepy little historian. Before we begin tonight, go ahead and save this story for later. Rome took over the ancient world for 1,000 years, so there's no pressure to finish it before falling asleep. And if you're still awake somewhere out there in the world, leave a comment with your city and local time. I always love imagining tiny insomniac historians scattered across the planet. Now, get comfortable, adjust your blanket, and let us slowly drift back more than 2,000 years.
Tonight, story is the rise and fall of the Roman Empire.
A civilization that began as a muddy little village beside a river, and somehow turned itself into one of the most powerful empires in human history. An empire so enormous, it stretched across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. An empire with emperor, gladiator, political assassination, civil war, luxury bath, questionable fashion choice, and at least one military invasion involving elephants. Because apparently Hannibal looked at the Alps and thought, yeah, the elephants can probably handle that. Surprisingly, they could not. Tonight's story is based on historical records from Roman historians like Livy, Tacitus, Plutarch, and others. No wild conspiracy theory. No aliens built the empire. Just the slow, fascinating rise and collapse of Rome. And it all began in the year 753. According to Roman legend, two twin brothers were born near the Tiber River, Romulus and Remus. Their mother was a priestess. Their father was supposedly Mars, the god of war himself, which already sounds like the start of a very dramatic reality show. Soon after birth, the twins were abandoned near the river, but instead of dying, they were discovered by the she-wolf, who cared for them and kept them alive. And yet, Rome founding myths literally includes wolf adoption. Honestly, that explains quite a lot about Roman behavior later on, as the boys grew older. They gathered followers and decided to build a new city beside the Tiber River. But there was one small problem. Neither brother wanted to share power, which, as we'll discover tonight,
is basically the entire history of Rome in one sentence.
An argument turned violent. Romulus killed Remus, named the city after himself, and became Rome's first king. And just like that, Rome was born.
At first,
Rome was tiny, really tight, not marble temples and giant arenas here. More like muddy roads, wooden huts, farm animals, and people arguing loudly in Latin. So pretty much the ancient version of every growing city ever. But Rome has something unusual: discipline,
organization,
and almost supernatural ability to turn every problem into military expansion over time. Rome evolved from a kingdom into a republic. The Romans became deeply suspicious of kings, mostly because their last king was cruel, arrogant, and apparently terrible enough to convince everyone. Maybe giving one man unlimited power is a bad idea, a surprisingly modern lesson. So Rome created a republic with senators, assembly, election, and complicated political system, of course. The system was still mostly controlled by wealthy elite, so it was left government by the people and more government by rich men who really enjoyed speeches. Still, the Republic worked remarkably well for centuries. Rome expanded across Italy, then across the Mediterranean, and eventually Rome encountered its greatest rival, Carthage. Now Carthage was rich, powerful, and dominated sea trade. The Romans and Carthaginians fought three gigantic conflicts called the Punic War. And during the Second Punic War, the Carthaginian general Hannibal did something completely insane. He marched an army, including war elephants, across the Alps to invade Italy. Historians still talk about this today because, honestly, it sounds impossible. The mountains were freezing. The terrain was brutal. Many soldiers died. Most of the elephants died too, which is unfortunate because transporting elephants over snowy mountains already feels like a management nightmare. Hannibal nearly destroyed Rome.
At the Battle of Cannae,
His army surrounded and annihilated tens of thousands of Roman soldiers. Rome was terrified, but Rome had one terrifying strength of its own. It refused to quit, no matter how badly things went.
the Romans just kept rebuilding army.
Again and again and again. Eventually, Rome defeated Carthage, destroyed the city completely, and became the dominant power of the Mediterranean world. By this point, Rome was unbelievably wealthy, and that created new problems, because whenever enormous wealth enters politics, things usually become messy. The rich became richer. Poor farmers lost their land. Political violence increased. Generals became more powerful.
And Roman politics slowly transformed into a dangerous competition between ambitious men with army.
Which is generally not ideal for democracy. Eventually, one man rose above the chaos. Julius Caesar, brilliant general, master politician, extremely confident. Probably too confident. After conquering Gaul, Caesar marched his army toward Rome, crossing the Rubicon River, a decision that triggered civil war. From that moment forward, Rome would never truly be a republic again. Caesar won the war and became dictator. Some Romans adored him. Others feared him, especially the senators, who worried Caesar planned to become a king. And Romans hated kings almost as much as modern people hate mandatory software update. So in 44, a group of senators assassinated Caesar right inside the Senate. Unfortunately, murdering Caesar did not save the Republic. It only created more chaos. After years of civil war, Caesar's adopted son Octavian, later known as Augustus, emerged victorious, and in 27, Augustus became the first Roman emperor. Officially, he claimed Rome was still a republic. Unofficially, he controlled basically everything. Classic Roman politics. Under Augustus,
Rome entered an era of relative peace known as the Pax Romana.
the Roman roads connected the empire. Trade flourished. Cities expanded. Aqueducts delivered fresh water across vast distances. Roman engineers built structures so durable that some still stand today, which is honestly embarrassing for modern parking lot. At its height, the Roman Empire stretched from Britain to the Middle East. Millions of people lived under Roman rule. Latin spread across Europe. Roman law shaped future government. Roman architecture influenced civilizations for centuries. For a while, Rome seemed unstoppable, but no empire remains powerful forever. Slowly, cracks began to appear. Political corruption, economic trouble, civil war, inflation, military instability, and increasingly, Rome struggled to defend its massive borders. Outside the empire, Germanic tribes pushed closer and closer. By the 3rd century, Rome entered a period historians call the crisis of the 3rd century. Emperors rose and fell constantly. Some ruled for only months before being assassinated. At one point, becoming a Roman emperor honestly looked like the most dangerous job on earth. Eventually, Emperor Constantine tried to stabilize the empire. He embraced Christianity, founded Constantinople, and reorganized Roman government. But the empire was simply too enormous, too divided, and too unstable. In 395, the Roman Empire officially split into two halves, the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. The Eastern half survived for nearly another 1,000 years. The Western half did not. In 410, Rome itself was sacked by invaders for the first time in centuries. The psychological shock was enormous. The eternal city suddenly no longer seemed eternal. And finally, in 476, the last Western Roman emperor was removed from power. The Western Roman Empire was gone. After more than 1,000 years, Rome had fallen, but strangely, Rome never truly disappeared. Its law, architecture, politics, religion, and ideas continued shaping the world long after the empire collapsed. Even to pieces of Rome surround us everywhere. In our government, our road, our alphabet, our calendars, even our obsession with dramatic political scandal. Some things never change. And perhaps that is the real legacy of Rome. Not just conquest, not just emperor, but the reminder that every civilization, no matter how powerful, is still human, built by people, strengthened by people, and eventually undone by people too. And now, dear sleepy historians, our journey through ancient Rome comes to an end. Thank you for spending this quiet night with me. Close your eyes, relax your shoulders, and let the echoes of ancient Rome slowly fade into dreams.